Welcome back to the Veterinary Business Podcast, where we bring together practical conversations for veterinary professionals who want to grow stronger businesses, build better systems, and think more strategically about the future of their careers. Today, we're talking about a topic that many veterinary professionals may not have seriously considered yet: how your clinical knowledge, leadership experience, and hard earned expertise can become the foundation for a scalable continuing education business. Veterinary professionals spend years building specialized knowledge, but in many cases, that expertise only generates income when they're physically in the clinic, seeing patients, managing teams, or solving problems in real time. So the question becomes, is there a smarter way to package that knowledge, serve your profession, and create a business model that is not completely dependent on your time? So to help us explore that, we're joined by Allan Montgomery, founder of the Elite Nurse Practitioner and ProCo Start. Justin holds degrees in biology, chemistry, nursing, and a Master of Science in nursing. He started the Elite Nurse Practitioner in 2019 to help nurse practitioners build unique clinical and business skills, start their own practices, and gain more autonomy in their careers. In just a few years, Justin scaled the Elite Nurse Practitioner into a 7-figure yearly income business by creating consistent, valuable education around a very specific problem in his profession: lack of autonomy and being underpaid. Today, he helps other professionals understand how to build profession-focused online course businesses that create more leverage, more impact, and more freedom. Justin, welcome to the podcast. We're really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. Look forward to enlightening veterinarians on another business they probably never thought of.
So, Justin, many veterinary professionals are used to earning income by providing services directly, seeing patients, managing a practice, leading a team, or consulting one-on-one. What is the core mindset shift they need to make before they can even consider turning their expertise into a continuing education business?
Well, I think that to start a continuing education business, you need to realize that there are other models that a medical veterinarian professional can do, like something that's outside of just utilizing the skills and knowledge that you learned in school and through your practice. Like you can actually leverage that information, that knowledge, and turn it into a pretty passive business. So I think one of the big mindset shifts that a veterinarian should make, and this includes really any kind of medical professional, someone who uses their hands, who is seeing patients and that sort of a thing. I think the biggest mindset shift you need to make is that you need to realize that you can let your knowledge actually work for you instead of through you. Like most people just let their knowledge work through them. Like they're just the vessel of their knowledge, that the knowledge has to work through so they can treat a patient, make, money, generate business, etc. Well, you can actually package up your knowledge and turn it into something that works for you, a business that's generally passive in nature. And yeah, most medical professionals don't really think about it.
hmm For someone who thinks, I'm just doing my job, I don't have anything unique to teach, how would you help them see the value in the experience?
Um, I think that you need to ask yourself, do people ask me for advice? Do other professionals in this space ask me for help? Do they come to me with complex cases? Do they ask me to teach them a skill, a procedure, that sort of a thing? Have you been in practice long enough to where you feel like you've developed a unique perspective on treating a patient a certain way? Have you developed a way to do a procedure a different way compared to what most people do? So, I mean, most professionals out there, if you've been in practice for more than 5 years, I mean, surely to God, there's something that that you're pretty good at compared to a new grad, right? I mean, any new
Yeah.
grad would pay a lot of money to be able to be 5 years ahead of the curve, right? So, So you have valuable knowledge, I guarantee it. I mean, think about a new veterinarian that's just got out of school. I'm pretty sure they would pay money to learn from you about some kind of advanced skill, advanced operation, something like that. So I can guarantee you most of your listeners probably can leverage something they have and package it up into a course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So when someone has years of clinical or business experience, it can be tempting to turn everything they know into a course. So how should veterinary professionals identify the right course topic, one that solves a real problem, feels valuable to the professional, and has actual business potential?
I think you need to first ensure that you identify a topic you want to teach that's actually going to be in demand. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of people that get into the continuing education space, they come up with an idea and they create a course and then they try to sell it and it's just crickets because at the end of the day, the thing you're teaching isn't really that valuable to people. And so you really need to ensure there's going to be some kind of demand for it. And ultimately, the best way to do that is just ask yourself, does this actually solve a problem? Is this actually a real solution? Is this something that's actually transformative for a student? After they take this course, after they take this training, after they obtain this continuing education, or can they step into practice now and actually be a more competent veterinarian, medical professional, whoever? If the answer is no, then you probably don't really have a very good idea. So yeah, you see, you basically have to ask yourself those questions. Is this something that's valuable? Is it transformative?
Mm-hmm. What would be a simple way to validate a course idea before, spending months building the whole thing?
Um, well, ask yourself the questions I just basically said, and then do a little bit of market research. Actually see what's going on out there. So, the internet's a very, very big place, but it's a very powerful tool if you use it the right way. So, with utilizing a variety of different AI tools as examples, using these LLMs, these large language models like Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, get into it and ask it to do some deep research on whatever topic that you're interested in teaching. Ask it to do that. Ask it to do some deep research, and then from that research, then validate the idea. How, are there people who, are asking questions about this? Is this a topic that's discussed in Facebook groups, on message boards, in subreddits, etc.? Is this something that people are talking about? Is this something that actually solves a problem? Is this a problem people are discussing? If it is, chances are it'll probably work.
Hmm. I think sometimes we can have a lot of ideas, but we don't really know where to start. So, how should they choose which one to start with if they have several possible course ideas?
Yeah, I think you just need to rank them by potential demand, essentially. Like, what's the biggest problem it solves? So just rank them in a way to where, 1 through 5, let's say you come up with 5 ideas, rank the top problem and the top solution and the top transformation. So, as an example, if you teach people how to start, uh, oh, I don't know, some kind of veterinarian practice that's very, very specific, very niched. If you teach someone how to create a veterinary practice or scale their practice, their business, then that transformation is more money, more autonomy, more freedom. So that transformation ranks pretty high compared to teaching a vet how to, I don't know, suture a post-op wound or something. I mean, that's not as valuable as that, correct? So like you got to look at what's the transformation, what's the end goal of the student, and then rank that. What's the most valuable transformation versus the least valuable? Like what's the biggest problem it's solving? You know what I mean? If you do that, you should be able to figure out what's going to be in higher demand, what's going to be more valuable.
That actually gives a very clear idea. So, just said a course business still needs trust, credibility, and an audience. So, from your experience building the elite nurse practitioner, what role did consistent content, positioning, and visibility play in turning your expertise into a scalable business?
Yeah, so to build a continuing education course business, so vets out there want to start a CE business.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand that it's going to be an online business. It's going to be a digital business. And that's just what it is. It's an e-commerce business at the end of the day. So you need to realize, how does that actually work? It is completely different than a vet practice. It's a totally different model, like completely different model. So it lies 100% online in the digital space. So how do you actually get clients? With a vet practice, people just see your Google business listing and call you, right? Or they get a referral from someone else down the street or their neighbor or whatever. Well, with a CE business, you have to market it online. The good news is with marketing to veterinarians, it's a very specific target, and so it's very easy to target veterinarians. If you're trying to sell, oh, I don't know, some kind of fancy toothbrush through Meta, you're targeting everyone, right? But with a CE business that teaches vet education, you're only targeting a veterinarian. So it's very easy to market towards them, but you have to create content that's specific to the vets, and it needs to align with what it is that you're actually teaching. So as an example, let's say you want to create a continuing education business for vets on how to s- prepare your vet practice for private equity acquisition. I just made that up. Okay. I mean, because I know that's a lot of PEs buying a lot of vet practices, right? And most people probably have no clue what that process is. So let's say you want to create a course about that. So all the content you create on your website needs to basically be talking about that topic, nothing else, right? That's, listen, are you tired of the grind? You want to make you want to make a seven-figure exit, blah, 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 whatever. You talk about that sort of stuff through your, videos, articles, you create the content on your website. By doing that, vets will gravitate towards your site. They will see the content posted on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, etc. They'll begin following you because they're interested in what you're discussing. Once they begin following you, they'll start listening to you more and more and more. And eventually, if they're actually really interested in what you're talking about, they'll realize that you have this course over here that guides them through the process in a significant amount of detail compared to what you provide for free. Or maybe you have some high level mastermind or something like that that guides people through this process. And a small percentage, single digit percentage of your audience will actually purchase your course or your mastermind or your product or service. But the good news is that that product or service is very high ticket. It's something that's $1,000, $5,000. So you really only need to have a dozen or two customers a month to be making a pretty healthy little income. So that's kind of just how you do it, just from a very high level standpoint.
Mhm. What do you think matters more in the beginning, having a large audience or having the right audience?
Ooh, yeah. I think having the right audience is probably more important. Yeah. I mean, let's say you create a business, a CE business as a vet, and you get a bunch of people who are not vets, not even vet techs. Maybe they're just like people who are just really interested in it. Maybe they watch Animal Planet or something like that. Like, those people will not buy your course. They are not a veterinarian professional. They're just not, right? So a big audience isn't necessarily a good thing. So when I scaled the elite nurse practitioner, my CE business to seven figures, and I had an eight-figure exit event through that business that allowed me to retire before the age of 40. Um, my audience on Instagram was I had 7,000 followers. My Facebook page had 20,000 followers. My YouTube channel had, I don't know, 1,000 subscribers or something like that. But those followers were high quality followers. There were people who actually bought from me because at the end of the day, I really could care less if you follow me and like me if you're not buying from me. This is a business. That's all I really care about, right? And that's how you need to approach this.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm really interested to know what kind of content helped people trust you the most when you were building the elite nurse practitioner.
It was motivational stuff. It wasn't really content about starting a practice. Through the elite nurse practitioner, what I did was I taught not only nurse practitioners, but I taught MDs, PAs, DOs. I taught those individuals how to start medical practices. And I had content about those sorts of topics. But the content that really gained the following for me was more of the motivational stuff, more of like hey, I'm going to open your eyes to something. You're working over here for this practice and, making 80 bucks an hour over here. You realize that if you were doing this on your own, you'd be making $300 an hour. Like, I just opening their eyes and motivating them, getting them off their butt and, telling them like, hey, get off your butt and do this yourself. Stop wasting your time. Stop making other people rich. Like, yeah. And so stuff like that basically really is what gained my following. It wasn't really very specific to starting a practice. So
That's amazing. That point about visibility and trust is such an important one because whether someone is building a continuing education business, growing a veterinary practice, or trying to become better known in their local market, people need to understand who you are, what you offer, and why they should choose you. So, for veterinary practice owners, that visibility often starts online. Before a pet owner ever calls the clinic, they're usually checking Google, they're reading reviews, looking at that website, comparing nearby practices, and trying to decide who feels more trustworthy. That is exactly why Veterinary Business Institute offers a free marketing strategy meeting for veterinary practices. In this session, Lila Stone and the Equa marketing team review your practice's online presence and prepare a customized veterinary veterinary marketing plan based on your market, your visibility, and your growth opportunities. They look at areas like your Google presence, local visibility, website, reviews, and how effectively your practice is positioned to attract high quality new patients. So, the goal is to help you understand where new patient opportunities may be getting missed and what can be done to create a more consistent flow of new patient calls. There is no pressure and no hard sell. It is designed to give veterinary practice owners a clearer picture of what is working, what is not, and what steps could strengthen their online growth. You can book a free marketing strategy meeting at www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. And with that in mind, Justin, I'd love to bring the conversation back to the early building stage. So once someone has a clear idea and understands their audience, what are the first practical steps they should take to build the coast business without, overwhelming themselves or taking too much time away from their main work?
well, you need to understand the steps on how to do it. So first, validate your idea and come up with an actual idea. Come up with a value proposition first. So what value are you proposing to the world? Like most people don't ask themselves that question when they start a business. Most vets who start a practice, any medical professional who starts a practice, they already know the value proposition, so they never actually have to identify it. The value proposition is I'm treating patients. I'm helping them feel better. That's the value I'm delivering, right? With other businesses, you actually have to come up with a value proposition. What's the value I'm proposing to the world here? And so with a CE business, come up with your value proposition first. I know that sounds very pie in the sky kind of foo-foo raw kind of stuff, but like you need to create that because it sets the foundation of your business. So what value are you proposing to the world? A simple equation for this is what specific problem am I solving for a specific group of people and what's the solution to that problem basically, right? So what's the problem? Who am I targeting? And what's the solution? Come up with that. And then from there, it's building an online business. creating everything in a way to where it's ready to launch. And so I usually recommend to people first is to just build out your product, build out your course first. It does it doesn't matter if you build a CE business out if you don't actually have a product to sell. So go ahead and just get your product developed. Go ahead and get the course created. Once the course is created, then at that point you can build the CE business. Building a course is not hard. Most people can build a course. We've all been to school for many, many years. We can all do that. So building a course is pretty simple. Selling the courses, that's hard. Selling the course is what's difficult. Um, so you need to create the business, create your website, and then create the platform how you're going to spread this to the world. And you just got to create your social media pages. You got to be on as many social media pages as you possibly can. It's just how you spread the word. And then you need to develop content. Like I usually recommend to people that you publish content at least 2 to 3 times a week. That could be 2 or 3 videos. It could be one video, 2 articles, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. And then just start sending it out there. Post it on your social page, post it through your email, post it on your website, and just allow people to start finding it. It usually will take 3 to 6 months for this business to gain any kind of traction. So my biggest piece of advice to people who want to get into this is to be patient.
Mm-hmm. How can someone make progress on this kind of business while still, working full time or managing a practice?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The good news is that this kind of business only takes about 100 to 140 hours to start. Okay.
Mm.
That's it. The, all this stuff can be automated. You can use AI to help you create so much of this stuff. So anywhere between 100 and 140 hours is what your time investment is going to be. And so most of my clients that I guide through this, I usually tell them spend 10 hours a week on this for 12 weeks, and your CE business and your course will be developed. So I mean, I think most people have 10 hours a week that if they really wanted to do this, they could do it. A couple hours every night, a few hours on the weekend. That's all you got to do. So you can work full time and do this. You do not have to quit your job. You don't have to cut down your hours whatsoever. When I built the Elite Nurse Practitioner, I was working full time at an urgent care, and I had 3 practices that I started and I was operating. So you can do this. Most of my clients, I mean, no, not most, all of my clients are still working full time, and they're just doing this as more or less a side project. And it takes most of them about 3 months to get the CE business and their first course developed. And then after that, once it's developed, you can expect to spend about 10 hours a week on it to keep the thing operational. And that's just developing content on a regular basis, publishing that content, distributing the content, answering some emails, answering some messages, dealing with any kind of customer service sort of thing. And that's pretty much it. Uh, you'll spend a little bit more hours on it if you're developing new courses, but overall it's about 10 hours a week to keep operational. So you can easily do this on a part-time basis.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we end this conversation, for veterinary professionals who want more autonomy, more income potential, or a bigger impact beyond the walls of their practice, what final advice would you give about building something scalable around their expertise?
Final advice would be to realize that this is not that difficult of a thing. Many of
Mm-hmm.
you might fear creating an online business because it's something completely new and it's completely out of your wheelhouse. The learning curve is not as steep as you think it is. I have seen people, I've had clients who have spent 10, 15 hours a week on this, got their CE business up and running, and within 6 to 12 months, we're generating $50,000 a month in passive income. I've had one client who started their CE business, and in 10 months they quit their job. They quit practicing. They just focus on their CE business. So the ceiling is not that high to to reach with a CE business. You can basically get to the ceiling very, very quickly. To get past that ceiling, that's what requires a significant amount of work to break through it to really scale it to like a seven-figure business. But to reach the ceiling of generating an extra three or $400,000 a year, that ceiling is pretty low to get to, and it's really not that difficult. There's not a lot of roadblocks and speed bumps to get there. It's a relatively straightforward business model. if you do it the right way and you're willing to change a component of your profession to being a marketer. Like at the end of the day, operating an online business, especially a CE business, it's mostly about just marketing it. That's really what it is. You know, creating the courses itself is not necessarily that difficult. It's marketing the business. You know, most business owners, marketing is the number one function of your business. And so with a CE business, that's especially true. So I think you need to realize that a lot of people just can't stand marketing. They do not want to put their face out there. They do not want to do social media and that sort of a thing. If that's the case, a CE business is probably not going to be the right decision for you. So you got to make sure that you're comfortable with doing that.
Justin, this has been such a valuable conversation. Thank you for sharing not only the strategy behind building a continuing education business, but also the mindset behind it. So, moving from simply trading time for income to creating something that can scale, serve others, and open up new opportunities. Now, for veterinary professionals listening, the big takeaway is that your expertise has value beyond the work you do day to day. Whether you're a practice owner, an aspiring owner, a clinical leader, or someone with a specialized area of knowledge, there may be a real opportunity to package what you know in a way that helps others while also creating more leverage in your own career. The key is to start with a real problem, understand the audience clearly, build trust through valuable content, and take practical steps instead of trying to create everything at once. Justin, thank you again for joining us and for giving our listeners a fresh way to think about professional growth, education, and long-term independence. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Veterinary Business Podcast. We hope today's episode gives you something practical think about as you continue building a stronger, more sustainable future in veterinary medicine. Thank you.